He was
Oh, hey, Jacob.
asking, do you see AI as an assisting tool or a threat to cybersecurity?
AI, I think, is like any other tool. You know what I mean? So like whatever, a shovel can
like
be
a
used.
Screwdriver?
Or a screwdriver, right? Exactly, right? That can be, you know, it can be something that's a productivity tool, or it, you know, conceivably could be a weapon. And it's the same thing. So with AI, I think where it's harder for us as people is that it's almost like we're going through these orders of magnitude increases in complexity, right? Less and less people truly understand it. Which means, you know, we don't just have that kind of, street sense or common sense of, you know, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it working or not? And so I think with AI, that makes it more challenging. Where AI, I think, is great is at looking at things like detections, right? So what Sentinel-1 has been doing as an example, right? So it can do a better job of catching the very subtle kind of attacks where they're doing things like living off the land. So, you know, manipulation of remote administrative tools like PowerShell or RDP. It can also do a great job in accelerating security operations like SOC kind of work. So it can go in and, it, you know, you look at that closed pool of data and it can look at, okay, every analyst, every time they see X type of event occur, how do they respond? What communications go to the customer? And so some companies have done a great job of actually going in and sort of auto-writing, auto-populating all those kind of reporting elements or collecting the forensics to create that sort of investigation report or micro investigation report. But I think the ultimate one, I think where it's going to get really interesting is where it starts to actually look at the metadata of security operations and say, all right, when I see an indicator of compromise, what's the next thing I investigate? And if it's positive, what's the next thing I do? So it actually starts to learn the process of the methodology. Right. Exactly. Like what does the police inspector do? And then I think that's going to continue to push it farther into the kind of the response side of security operations. And then on the Jacob, to your point, on the bad guy side, right, they can use the tool to do things like multiple different kind of phishing campaigns and analyze the information and look at what was most successful and what kind of language is most effective. I think that's with generative AI, it's sort of becoming a little more human in the way it speaks, right? It can use lingo, it can be colloquial. And so that makes it a little harder, I think, for us to disseminate legit from unauthorized, right? So you think about, you get an email and it comes from Allie and it's using some of the words she says. You know, she doesn't say bye, she says, you know, ciao or something, right? Italian. It starts to figure that stuff out. And I think that's where it's really going to get tougher because, you know, one of the things we always kind of kidded around was things like, you know, language barrier issues you'd see in these emails where there was, you know, something was misspelled, poor grammar, things like that. Well, now it's getting to the point where that stuff's faster and smarter than we are. And, you know, doing the same thing, like running attack simulations, it could run thousands of different simulations against a particular vulnerability or looking for vulnerabilities. And, you know, in seconds or minutes, figure out which ones have the highest likelihood of succeeding. Whereas, you know, you think of like a pen tester or an analyst, it's going to take them significantly longer and they never have access to that kind of database from which they could test. So AI, you know, just, I guess it comes down to whose hands it's in.
I relate it back to what we often hear, that AI is taking jobs. AI is actually going to need to be leveraged to enhance jobs, to push what we do today to further limits. Otherwise, we're going to be squashed by the evil side of how they're evolving their code, picking their targets, etc. This is 118
Why
proof.
would anybody do this?
They fall apart. They're the most tender.
It tastes like I just got pepper sprayed by a cop. No more questions. Are we done?